My name is Chachawan. I'm 81 years old. And if I speak to you today with a calm voice, it is not because I have always been calm. It is because I spent too many years inside a mind that would not stop. I thought too much. I replayed too much. I worried too much. I tried to solve things that had not happened yet. I returned to old wounds as if they were still open in the present. I analyzed what others said, what they did not say, what they might mean, what I should have done, what could go wrong next. And for a very long time I believed this was wisdom. I believed it was care. I believed it was responsibility. But it was not. It was overthinking. And overthinking did not make me safer. It made me tired. It made me distant. It made me less available to the life that was actually here. The 5 lessons I'm going to share with you did not come from books alone. They came from long years of suffering, watching my own mind, and finally admitting that constant thinking was not the same as deep understanding. I was born in the north of Thailand in a village where life was practical and demanding. Nobody sat with me when I was young and taught me how the mind creates circles. Nobody told me that some thoughts are not signs of truth, but just repetitions of fear. If something worried me, I assumed I should think harder. If something hurt me, I assumed I should go back over it until I understood it completely. If something uncertain appeared, I believed I had to mentally prepare for every possible outcome. In other words, I trained myself very early to feed the mind whenever it became uncomfortable. I did not know then that I was training my own suffering. When I entered monastic life, I thought spiritual practice would quickly correct this. I believed meditation would make my mind still and clean, but the first thing silence showed me was how addicted I was to movement inside. I could sit without moving my body and still be running in thought. I could listen to teachings while quietly comparing myself to others. I could breathe in a peaceful place and still be mentally rewriting old conversations. It took me years to admit something very humbling. I was not thinking because thinking was helping. I was thinking because I did not know how to stop. And here's what I didn't understand then. Overthinking feels useful. That is why it traps so many people. It feels like effort, like seriousness, like intelligence. It gives the illusion that you are doing something about your pain. But often you are not solving. You are circling. You are feeding. You are adding weight to something that would have passed more naturally if you had not pulled it back into the center over and over. Once I saw this in myself, the whole path changed. The first lesson that ended much of my overthinking was this: not every thought deserves your attention. This sounds too simple, but it changed my life. I used to live as if every thought that entered my mind had arrived for a reason and demanded response. If it came back twice, I thought it must be important. If it came with fear, I thought it must be urgent. But thoughts are not all worthy visitors. Some are old habits. Some are fear in a familiar voice. Some are memory trying to survive. Some are the mind looking for movement because it does not know how to rest. Once I stopped opening the door to everything, I began to breathe differently. The second lesson was this: thinking is not the same as understanding. For many years, I mistook mental repetition for depth. I thought that if I stayed with a problem long enough in my mind, I would eventually arrive at truth. But often the opposite happened. The more I thought, the further I moved from the thing itself. What remained was not clarity, but exhaustion. There is a kind of thought that reveals, and there is a kind of thought that only repeats. I had to learn to recognize the difference. Let me explain. If your mind returns to the same point again and again without opening anything new, you are probably not understanding more. You are just digging the same hole deeper. The third lesson was returning to the body. Overthinking cannot survive as strongly when you come back to physical reality with sincerity. My mind loved abstraction. It loved possibilities, meanings, fears, memories, and future dramas. But the body is simple. The feet are on the floor or they are not. The breath is moving or it is not. The hands are tense or they are soft. The shoulders are raised or they are releasing. When I learned to come back to the body, not as a technique to perform well, but as a home, my thinking softened. The body brought me back to what was actually happening, and that interrupted many false storms. You know what surprised me most? Sometimes the body knew the truth before my mind did. My body knew when I was tightening around something that was not real yet. It knew when my mind had gone too far into fear. It knew when I had left the moment. A clenched jaw, a shallow breath, a tight chest, restless hands. These became signals for me, not signs that I was broken, signs that I was no longer here. The fourth lesson was seeing that overthinking often protects a deeper feeling. This was very painful for me to admit. I like to think of my overthinking as intelligence, but much of the time it was avoidance. If I kept thinking, I did not have to feel the sadness directly. If I kept analyzing, I did not have to face the fear clearly. If I kept replaying a conversation, I did not have to sit with the humiliation underneath it. Overthinking is often not about solving the problem. It is about staying one layer above the heart. Once I saw that, I started asking a different question. Not what am I thinking about, but what am I not wanting to feel beneath this thinking? That question saved me from many long nights. The fifth lesson was the deepest one. I am not every thought that passes through me. I had heard teachings like this before, but I had not lived them. There is a huge difference between hearing a beautiful sentence and actually resting in its truth. For most of my life, whatever my mind said, I treated it as if it described me. If it said I was failing, I became failure. If it said I was in danger, I became fear. If it said I had not done enough, I carried shame all day. I did not know how to remain the one who sees, instead of becoming the content of what was seen. This changed slowly, but once it changed, everything changed with it. Thoughts still came, but they no longer owned the house in the same way. What most people don't realize is that overthinking does not end because the mind becomes empty. It ends because you stop giving every thought equal power. You stop treating every mental movement like a truth. You stop feeding every inner question. You stop calling repeated fear wisdom. You stop turning uncertainty into a problem that must be solved immediately. That is what happened in me. Not silence through force. Relief through clearer seeing. There was a period in my 70s when these lessons became more than ideas. I was going through changes in the temple, changes in my body, changes in my role among younger monks. My mind was busy with all of it. It was asking who I was now, what was being taken from me, what I still needed to prove. One evening I was sitting alone and suddenly I saw how tired I was of my own mind. Not because it existed, but because I had been serving it for too long. That was the night I truly understood these 5 lessons. Not in philosophy, in exhaustion. And there is a kind of truth that only exhausted people are finally ready to hear. If these words are helping you see your own mind with more honesty, maybe this is the right moment to stay close to this space. There are people listening right now who think their endless thinking means they care deeply, when in truth it is quietly draining their life. If this is reaching you, stay here. At 81 years old, I still think. I still have fears. I still have mornings when the mind wants to run. But it no longer owns me the same way. I know how to notice sooner. I know how to return more gently. I know how not to feed every fire. And because of that, there is more life available to me now than there was when I was younger and thinking all the time. Tell me in the comments which of these 5 lessons your mind needs the most right now. Not every thought deserves your attention. Thinking is not understanding. Return to the body. Feel what the thinking is avoiding. You are not your thoughts. I want to know. And if this gave you something real today, subscribe and leave a like so someone else can hear exactly what they need before they lose more years to a mind that never stops.